Hello, this is Monica.
Hello, Monica. You've got your radio voice on. You sound so professional.
Thank you.
Glad you could join us. We need at least one expert on the subject, and that's you.
You are the expert, but okay.
No.
Yeah, we're not experts. Yeah, we don't know a goddamn thing. Is that going to be your opening monologue?
It is now.
Device Squad, where we don't know shit. But thanks for listening.
Oh, I have to beep it now. I have to beep that out. We have a G rating. Jeez, come on. So, hey, welcome to Device Squad, the podcast for the mobile enterprise from Anexinet. And please forgive my cold. As a leading technology consultancy and reseller, Anexinet helps clients provide a complete digital experience for customers, employees, and end users. We accomplish this through our holistic approach, which encompasses all aspects of today's digital journey end to end. Anexinet partners with top technology vendors like HPE to offer products and services that enhance the complete digital experience across customer engagement, enterprise mobility, cloud and hybrid IT, and analytics. Because great digital experiences rely on the smooth operation of all interconnected elements. From strategy through execution, we deliver custom multi-channel applications, including web, mobile, chat, and voice, with self-service apps for customer loyalty and enterprise apps that streamline internal processes to boost productivity. Now you can reimagine legacy applications to propel your business forward. Anexinet also helps you embrace modern cloud and hybrid IT infrastructure to provide a seamless experience at every touchpoint, empowering you to recover quickly from disaster, scale to meet demand, and automate systems for perfect performance 24/7. To maximize your competitive advantage, we ensure you always deliver the best experience possible by continuously honing your digital solutions through data-driven insights. How do you know if your business has what it takes to provide a complete digital experience, one that sets you apart, maintains competitive edge, and turns users into passionate fans? Simple. Just give us a call. Together, we can deepen engagement and make every digital experience remarkable. Today, we are going to be talking about help and support with Monica Avina. Monica, am I saying that right? I don't think I've ever said your name out loud.
That's fine. Yes, that's correct.
It's not Avina.
It is actually, well, in Spanish, it's Avina.
And you are our tech support lead.
That's right.
And where would we be without our crew of old white males? So we've got James Hoshor, regular guest and mobile strategist, and we've got Todd Chusid here.
All right.
Yeah, and of course, Nitin Bhatia, who's not been on for a while, so it's great to see him on here.
Yep, glad to be on here, guys.
Thanks for hopping on, everybody. So, Monica, you said that we need to do a podcast about help desk and support, and sounded like a great idea. And we're going to go over some service desk basics. We're going to talk about how to assess your organization's readiness to support mobile technology, the key components that your company will need to have in place to support mobile, some best practices for transitioning from development to support, and how to measure the success of your current support organization. All these other guys have been on the podcast before. They've all given their bios, but I've never had you on. So why don't you just give us your bio and tell us a little bit about your digital journey and how you got to come where you are.
Sure. It all began when I started working for a kind of telecommunications company where the main purpose of it was customer service. So we were working, we were supporting clients for a specific bank located in the US. And, at that moment, I realized, that everything that we were doing back then was possible due to technology. So we were able to, really, really kick it off, the customer service, that we were able to provide to this specific bank's client was, possible to do it using, everything that, new technologies were offering by then. So I became a support lead from that organization. And we were taking over, everything related to, the technological aspects. I started as a customer service representative. And then when I realized, like all the opportunities that we have in the technological field, I decided to, move along with it and just to get into that area. So my digital journey, I start all over there when I realized that technology, makes everything easier, faster. You can be more efficient, you can be more effective, if you know how to use the correct technology. From there, I moved over to another company, which is Dell. Right now, it's no longer Dell. I think it's Entity Data or something like that, because Michael Dell, as you know, he sold the company. So I was back there. I got into that company as a technical support lead, as a senior technical support lead, and later on, I became as manager of the IT support organization. So we were supporting basically pretty much everything. We were level 1. It was level 1 and level 2. We were supporting the network infrastructure. We were supporting desktops. I mean, everything related to hardware. We were supporting software. We were supporting anything related to service management requests. So all of it, was focused to support not IT organizations, because there were just mainly, it was focused on the enterprise. So saying that we had a lot of financial, health companies that they were in the need of, having this digitalization migration put it in place. And the company was getting in contact with them. And then when they get the processes, the technologies hired with Dell, we were right there to support all of those technologies and all of the, digitalization process. From Dell, I spent there almost 3 years and a half. And then I moved to Propelics, where it was kind of a new industry for me, because I was already into, desktops, infrastructure, voice systems and stuff. But then, I realized, or I heard about the mobile technology. I started reading a lot about it, and I realized that it was an industry with a lot of potential, that it has a lot of growth, and that it was continue growing. And the predictions was that mobile technology, was going to be huge back then. And I'm talking about 4 years almost ago. And from there, everything has been a lot in regards to mobile, and a lot of new technologies and a lot of things to learn. And it has been, a great journey.
What was it that drew you initially to this specialty? What do you love about the support field?
I've always been very, very into the customer service. I think that a company that provides a good customer service is a company that it's going to be success. I mean, there's going to be a lot of success for that company. I think that if you focus on that area, if you take care of your clients, of your employees, on the right way, the company will succeed always. I think that's how it's going to be. So I think that, I've seen a lot of companies not really providing me myself as, I'm an employee, I'm a citizen, I need services, I pay my taxes, everything. So I need someone always, to take care of what I'm doing, to help me, to guide me through to, if I need to submit a request, I don't know, to the government or something, I need to get in contact with people, for everything, to be able to do it. And me as being just like a regular, individual, I realized that there are a lot of gaps of the type of service, that people sometimes can give you. Even, as I mentioned before, as an employee, I see that, sometimes you have questions about, who can fix my computer, what's going on with my computer, how can I contact you, just to do my work faster. I've seen, that there's some issues, on my network infrastructure, or my phone is not working or something. And I always need to get in contact with someone. And that basically lead me to, understanding that there are a lot of gaps. People sometimes they don't understand what's their main function, on their positions when they're in the service and the customer service field. And I realized that there is a lot of potential for me, for a lot of people, not only for me, in that area to improve it, to actually maximize the service that they're providing, and to help them to understand, that even though it might not be, like the main area from a company, which talking about maintenance or support entity or a help desk entity, but it is really, really important to have the correct people helping your company employees or even your clients. It's crucial, I think. And that's basically what took me, to here to support.
That's great. Monica, why don't we start out by just sort of explaining what a help desk is?
Sure. Well, basically, I think that a help desk, in my experience, is basically the front door, for an IT organization. It's basically, the main channel that put together all the effort, all the correct effort to support the IT organization. Anything related to the IT organization needs to go through the help desk. So basically, I think the help desk is the front door that consolidates, everything what a company needs in order to, technological areas speaking, and, make it happen.
So at this point, is there any organization that doesn't need a help desk? I mean, it sounds like it would be pretty ubiquitous.
From my perspective, there are organizations out there that they can survive without having a help desk put it in place. But I think that if they want to, achieve a kind of successful level within the organization, there should be certainly, a help desk implemented.
I just want to help people and help organizations understand why they might need to start the process of updating their support team and their help desk. So why don't we maybe start off by talking about how you think help desks have changed, like in the last 5 or 10 years with the introduction of mobile technology?
Sure. I think it has changed a lot. 5 years ago, working in a help desk, it was just about just getting tickets, just trying to understand what was the problem about it, and then just try to route it to the correct guys. That was my experience on help desk level 1. Just it was basically that. On level 2, you get the tickets routed to the next level, and they were just trying to diagnose the issue and then pass it along. And the technology back then, by having users using only computers and stuff, desktop and stuff, and their work, they have to complete their work by the end of the day, but they didn't have even though they have a high priority, they have to wait until, the ticket got to the correct technician. And that probably could take, back then, I don't know, probably 1 week, to actually resolve the issue of the application or something related. I think now for mobile, after, through all of these years, I've seen that mobility, it's moving so fast. The velocity of mobility is tremendous fast, and people is adapting, mobile devices and handheld devices as their main, sometimes as their main to work. So how do you provide a support that it's really slow? How do you, how can you, set expectations right now for those handheld or for those mobile devices to fix users' issues that might take, 5 or 7 days? That will not work. So you need to come up with a plan, where you're having the correct support flow. And if someone has an issue, if a user has an issue with the mobile device, you need to understand that they're using the mobile device for work because it needs to make their job more efficient. So the resolution time needs to be faster, way faster. Operating systems upgrades are happening, just like every 2-3 months, so you need to make sure that the application, the software is working properly on that operating system, that the functions are not being lost, that the user experience, is continue, remains the same. And it's been amazing because that's one of the reasons why you're using mobility instead of probably sometimes desktop. So the resolution time, basically, I think it has to be way, way faster. And I think that changes everything. That's what I've seen from the help desk. Before 5 or 10 years ago, even the customer service experience was terrible. Everyone, back then, I think the feedback that we heard back then was like, I need to call the IT guy, but probably this is not going to get resolved until 5 or, 3 or 5 days. And now I think the perspective is different by using, mobility and the customer experience that the user has, receives when the user goes through an IT help desk that knows mobility. They know that the issue will be fixed in a really short time.
Steve, I'll chime in a little bit. So I agree with what Monica's saying, and I think some of the changes we've seen certainly over the last 10 years, to her point, was the impacts to the organization itself within help desk. We all are familiar with the standard tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Now we're having to look at taking 2-tier, for example, and subdividing that up to where you have resources that are focused on, the standard desktop support services and capabilities that they've done traditionally over the last 10 years with supporting users in the organization. Now they're having to identify and either train existing resources to be knowledgeable and about mobile devices and the apps that they're delivering and the ability to support those, or they're having to hire those in or even look at outsourcing. So I think organizationally it is certainly a big change. I think the other thing that Monica touched on as well is the device support. And so we're seeing that organizations traditionally, they have their software again that manages the desktop, whether it's office support or specific applications, an ERP system, whatever. Now they're having to look at, either building a device lab internally or leveraging some tools out there that provide cloud-based device labs. And so we're seeing that dynamic and that challenge for organizations and making sure that they can cover those types of challenges that are being introduced because of organizations having to support mobile.
This is Todd. I'll take another spin off of the topics that Monica and James was talking about. We as mobile strategists, a lot of the things that our clients are asking for, they want anything at any time, at any place, anywhere. And we develop business processes, we develop applications, we develop content to support those things. I think where the help desk is headed is that, yes, there is a level 1, level 2, level 3. But I think what we're starting to see now is that how does the support desk, based off of those business processes and those mobile applications or any applications, how does the service desk now need to change to support anything, anytime, any place, and anywhere? And what I see happening is that traditionally there are service level agreements between the help desk, whether it be internal or external. But I see there's a concept in the industry talking about not just service level agreements, but what's your experience level agreement associated with the service desk? Because at the end of the day, if you have to have that good experience, it's just another dimension to service. Good experience will help your brand, will help your product, but get you to where you want to be as it relates to what our clients are asking us as, you can have all of those things, anything, anytime, any place, anywhere. But if you can't support it, then that's not good. So what experience from a support perspective and how are you adapting to support that, I think, is a critical component.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't support it, you're not really providing it.
I want to piggyback off of what Todd said. As companies start to embrace the idea of mobile, they are starting to stretch their feet out a little bit and starting to put more and more business critical applications out in the field, which puts sort of the help desk and customer support front and center in terms of how we run our business, right? How the customer runs their business. So it is imperative that the help desk and support run as a well-oiled machine. And I also feel that there is, time and a little bit of, as the workforce starts to switch over to the next generation, there's this just, as consumerization of applications has spread out there, we know the App Store has billions and billions of applications. The whole idea behind instant gratification and self-help is starting to get more and more popular amongst the more younger workforce. They want to be able to solve their problems on their own. They want to be, not call somebody, talk to them, log a ticket. Just, make it as easy as, hey, let me just, do it on my mobile phone because I'm right there in the field doing it. And you have all the information that you could capture. So even fundamentally how we go about engaging help desk is going to continue to change and evolve as we put more and more business critical applications out there, as the people who are using these applications change their mindset about how they want to be supported.
That's great. Thanks, guys. So let's just dig a little deeper. We talked about mobile as presenting some new challenges for help desk, for a support organization, including, the demands for anytime, anywhere access to data and so forth. What are some of the other unique challenges that mobile provides? I imagine that BYOD is particularly a nightmare for a support team, having to be able to support every device that's out there and not necessarily knowing what all those devices are. Everybody being on different operating systems and so forth. So Monica, can you address some more of these challenges that mobile presents?
Sure. I think, BYOD, it's correct. I think it's a big challenge, and it also concerns about the security, right, of the data, which is also, I think it's the security of data for every single organization. I think it's one of the top interests to keep it safe and just to make sure that it's, under the right hands and it's properly being used. I think it's one of them. I also think that, again, the velocity with, how the market for hardware and software is moving is also really, really hard. Sometimes we see some applications working, I don't know, for an example, for iOS 11, but not working anymore for iOS 12. And, people, they get the updates and notifications updates on their phone constantly, and they're just, some of them, the majority of the people I've seen is they're used to go along with the update, that they're being, updated with. So they just go ahead and upgrade their phone. So that's also another thing that it's kind of hard to understand. I also believe that, the fact that sometimes, organizations, they're not really understanding what's the adaptation from users to the mobile device, to the mobile applications. I think that's also a risk. If you have a mobile application, but you do not understand, as an organization, from the enterprise, but you do not understand how well is people getting adapted to the mobile application. You don't understand how many times the people is actually referring to the mobile applications to complete their job, if they're preferring to keep using their desktop, or how many people they're having or facing issues with the application, if the application is crashing, if the application is not displaying properly, if the application is not connecting to the services properly and stuff. If you do not understand that, once that the application that your program is on production, then you will end up by just losing those end users. They will stop using the application, and the outcome of your application will not be the expected one. I think that's also a major risk. Other than security, and usability of the application, I think there are also some other risks, just like having people not really being friendly, like technology friendly, and sometimes they're struggling. When you present a mobile application or any kind of new strategy, digital strategy, is a change for people. People is already from the enterprises specifically, they're used to work with what they have, and when you present something new, sometimes they don't want to go through the change, and they need to see the outcome, they need to see the value out of it. And I think that's also a good challenge for help desk mobility. You need to make sure that these people, who is sometimes not willing to or having a hard time to adapt to mobility, you need to make sure that they're having the best service, from the application and from the people who supporting the application.
To piggyback on what Monica was saying too, Steve, was, you talked about BYOD, and Monica was talking a little bit there about the cultural impacts and people resistant to change. Some of those challenges now are being presented by the introduction of mobile device management and mobile application management software, right? So that's probably the biggest thing as strategists we hear when we're consulting with our clients is, you're going to have to use some type of MDM or MAM solution to assist your help desk in properly supporting and triaging the issues as they're reported. But at the flip side, then you have the end users that are not willing to sometimes have an MDM software added to their device because they feel big brother's watching us. But at the same token, they want the support. And as Monica has talked about, and we've talked about so far, is that expectation for customer experience has been escalated because of the anytime, anywhere access to devices and information and such. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there, where you have to have the right tools, which is one of the challenges and impacts that we're seeing with organizations, and that's pretty much one of the biggest gaps, is making sure companies have the right tools in place to provide the right support for the help desk resources themselves. But it's that cultural impact and the resistance by some of the folks across an organization, their willingness to load an MDM onto their phones or their tablets and so forth to get that support. It's about education. It's about making sure people are comfortable and trust these processes that are being put in place to provide the support that they're expecting.
And then I think, to go off of what James was saying around and Monica was saying around BYOD, I hear a lot of things being added to the support desk, new tools, new technologies, more channels, whether it be social media, etc. So things just keep adding up. And I read a interesting statistic from ServiceNow, where because of BYOD, more than 53% of the people that are out there believe that the support desk will now become, because of BYOD, they'll become liaisons to mobile device vendors. So imagine if you just had, for argument's sake, 50% left. So one thing that your support desk is doing is being a liaison to mobile device vendors. Now, what's the other 50%, right? Now, is it cyber attacks? Is it what James was saying around new mobile device management tools like SOTI? Is it things associated with new critical business applications that Nitin was talking about? It just continues to add and to add and to add up. So I think that's where I think the service desk is, I'll say it's similar to testing, where it's kind of like the last thing in the chain, right? But I think those companies that face and adapt their organizations, head on, have to really start thinking, out of the box. And I know we're going to get to those ideas which are out of the box as it relates to the service desk later on to this podcast. But I thought it's just the mountain just keeps going higher and higher, I'll say.
Yeah, and it occurs to me that, we're like really obsessed about, bug fixing and ensuring that at launch that an app that's going out is going to be bug free, in addition to being, intuitive and have great design and so forth. But we also work really hard to cover every edge case and every alert and the offline experience and all these different things. But it just occurred to me, what happens with a company that's not as capable at producing apps, and so they put out an app that has bugs or that's not as easy to use, or they've forgotten about the offline experience and so forth. That must be hell on a support team. So what happens to that relationship between the developers and the testers and support? How does that all get resolved? If you have a poor development process to begin with, or if you have a poor design process to begin with.
Kind of answering your question, but not answering your question. I do think that anything that you do to the support desk, if you have symptomatic issues in your development or design process, is just putting a Band-Aid on it. I think at the end of the day, we have to not necessarily, hey, let's go add more people to our support desk, or let's go create more training videos, or let's go increase our knowledge base, or let's give them more tools. I do think that if there's a symptomatic issue and the organization realizes it, hopefully at some point they're capturing metrics to say that, hey, for our call volumes are through the roofs as soon as we deploy this application, it continues to be unstable. So I think at that point, the organization has to make some key decisions on how to improve their design and development process and better invest upfront and provide a better customer experience to the end customer, as well as sort of reduce the cost and the burden on your support organization. I think that would be the right approach to solve that problem.
I think you're right. That's a great point. So, Monica, how can an organization even begin to know whether or not they're even set up to support mobile? What would be the key areas that they would need to assess and address to determine, if their help desk is ready for mobile?
Well, from my perspective, I think, just like you said, going throughout the assessment, it's important to understand what are the services provided, what do we have, right? Every organization, I can tell you by experience, they do have a kind of support. Either, if it's a help desk, put it in place, just like, like a department or like an area, but they do have some type of support. They have people that, even though it's not officially, they are taking care of it. So I think that's the first point, to understand, what are the stakeholders, who is currently taking up it. If it's someone, as I mentioned, I truly believe that there's always someone taking care of it. Centralize, first of all, the support structure, I think, is one of the first steps. Identifying, obviously, what are the needs of the organization. That's basic, but then also identify who is supporting those needs. Then, centralize the support. Sometimes the support organization, sometimes I've seen companies that, they're actually supporting sometimes something similar to, mobile applications. They're supporting devices, the hardware, they're also supporting applications, desktop applications, network infrastructure, but all of that support, they're having different teams to do it. So it's kind of hard to actually, for them to visualize what is the gap if they don't have a centralized support organization. I think that will be the first step. Then, just trying to understand what's the responsibility from each stakeholder, understanding, who's accountable for what, who needs to be consulting, who needs to be informative, probably using some type of, racy metrics that helps a lot to understand, who needs to be, just contacted in case something happens, and who actually needs to take action on it. I think that's part of the process. Also, that I think that it's also important to understand is, what is the hierarchy structure, who needs to be on top of things, who need to just be on the operational area, who needs to be on the strategical area, who needs to be on the leadership area for the support processes. I think that's also really important. And not to leave it alone, but I think it's something really important also is just to, once we have identified these areas, I think it's also important to put a level of support on each step. I think the typical, the support structure, it goes from level 0 to level 4, where the level 0 is just basically a self-service support. In this case, what we've seen is a lot of self-service password reset portals. That's basically, so far, it's something what we do. With level 0, you can just, get into the portal, reset your password. Or, some other organizations, they have put in place, some type of hardware request self-service process, support process too. But then we need to understand what's, the scope from level 1, what should be doing level 1, what can we put around from level 1 to understand if they're doing correctly what they have to do, meaning for SLAs, metrics, KPIs, even OLAs, to understand what the scope from level 1 and what do they need to be doing, and then just come up with level 2, level 3, and probably level 4, to understand what are the vendors that need to be part of it. I think that once that we come up with this type of structure, I think it's really, really useful for mobility, because mobility, it's complicated, it's complex, because it has a lot of features, have a lot, sometimes it goes through some changes, and as we said, people need this service to be up to 24/7, and there's need to be someone just monitoring mobility.
So just to back up a bit, so let's just define what we mean when we talk about the different tiers of support: tier 1, 2, 3, and tier 4.
Well, from my perspective, I think tier 1, it's basically log and route, right? What they do is, since they having like a really high volume of calls, and it's not recommended for them to go, to go into a more technical, support process. So for me, it's just log and route. They answer the question, they take care of the user, with a good customer service. They, collect all of the information that a user is going through, all of the details of the problem, what's the hardware, what's the hardware the problem the user is using at the moment, what's the application that has been affected, or what's the specific support request. They collect all of the information, around of it, and then they make sure that they're routed to the correct resolver group. I think that's level 1 for me. I think, due to the volume of calls that they're receiving on a daily basis, they should just stick to it. If they can just, reset a password, unlock an account, probably, I don't know, just check if the services are up and running, for a specific application. But I think that's it. Just basically collect, try to make a, initial diagnosis of the issue, and log and route. When I said log, I mean, just obviously making sure that service call, it's been logged into a ticketing system where, all of the information of that issue is being put in there with all the details and comments. And then it could be, just pass it along to the next support level. For a level 2, I think it goes with a more expertise support team. The level 2 will probably not be able to fix the issue, but it will make sure, that specific issue that it's been, presented with, it's been triaged properly. Now you have more time, the SLAs, the resolution time, the acknowledgement time. It is a little bit more flexible with you, because you are not customer facing. So you have more time, to try to diagnose, to triage the issue, to make sure that the issue is actually belonging to your resolver group. Collect all of the information, reproduce the issue, testing devices, play an amazing role in this level of support, where you need to reproduce the issue. Constantly being able to reproduce the issue is a key for the resolution of the issue. Collect, again, just make all of your inputs, because once in the level 2 support, once that it's going through the triage, you're going to face a lot of new inputs about that issue. So you got to make sure, that you collect and document all of those, so that you can pass it to the technical team, who is going to be, able to get into the code, which is level 3, just get into the code, make changes, implementations, whatever is needed, so that the issue can be fixed. That's for me, the level 3. And for level 4, basically for me, it's vendors, meaning that I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you're using a technology for mobile. Let's going to say that you're using Xamarin as, the platform to develop. You're using, obviously, C# and .NET for Xamarin. And you have the developer, just working on it, but then it realizes that there is, like probably a service down, or there is an issue with the platform itself, the platform that is, a Xamarin platform. So your developer, who is from the technical level, from your technical team, which is the level 3, will not be able to fix it, even though, he's a programmer. It's not, part of, his scope. So that needs to be, worked out by the vendor team who is supporting the platform. And then you can escalate a ticket to level 4, which is this vendor service. That's what I think from my perspective.
Hey, Steve, one of the questions you asked was around how do you know your organization is ready to handle mobility? So I'll add a couple of things to what Monica was saying. To first understand mobile support readiness, we kind of go through a very thorough methodology as it relates to, is your organizational support organization ready for mobile? And we look at it at a few different ways. First, from a strategy perspective, help desk strategy, not overall mobile strategy. What's your help desk strategy? Meaning is like, the common terminology out there is, well, I have a shift left strategy. Well, you may have a shift left strategy, but what does that mean to you? What are you actually doing to support your shift left strategy? Another thing is that we really focus on understanding knowledge management and governance. I think those two elements are really key, because I think a lot of the folks have maybe knowledge management tools in place, whether it be, ServiceNow as an example, but you then have to look at, from a knowledge management perspective, how frequently and how efficiently can you be around knowledge management? Because again, things are moving at a rapid pace as it relates to mobile. How do you go about editing, authoring, publishing an issue throughout the organization? We have about 8 or 9 different dimensions that we look at. But the last one is probably the most important, is more of how are you at being proactive support? Because we have to start a help desk to support mobile is all about not just taking the call or taking the order and routing that through to the appropriate people, but how can the help desk start being proactive? And it's the things that Monica was saying, the things what Nitin was saying around, now let's start being proactive associated with analytics, whether it be crash analytics. Let's start being proactive as it relates to, let's start looking at the support team, looking at and getting in front of beta software. Let's start being proactive as it relates to setting up a lab for a new operating system that's going to be released, and the testing team being part of that. So just wanted to add those couple of different dimensions to how we, from a strategic perspective, can help companies define, are they mobile ready for support?
Just as Todd was talking about the different things that we're assessing, making sure you have the right MDM or MAM solutions, whether it's SODI, Mobile Iron, AirWatch, Aperion, to assist with the monitoring of those devices, proactive support, having a good trouble ticket system for not only capturing and logging the issues, as Monica was talking about, but to be able to store the knowledge base, as Nitin referenced. So documentation that can be leveraged very quickly in a single source area that will allow the help desk resources at any tier or level to be able to look at a certain script, make sure they ask the right questions to capture the proper information that's required to educate those support resources, not only the ones taking that call or maybe in the next line of escalation there, but to have the knowledge that's required. And as Todd was talking about, testing tools, looking at Perfecto, Cobaton, Telerik, whatever, making sure that even the help desk has the right tools from a testing perspective in device labs that are offered through some of those programs like Perfecto, so they can truly triage the scenario as what was described by that end user. So if the end user says, I have 1 LTE, bandwidth, and I'm experiencing this steps, as I'm using the application or device, then they can go and react that type of scenario from the user and see firsthand what they're really experiencing and help them solve that. Then you look at the analytics that Nitin and Todd were talking about, such as Firebase Analytics or App Annie or Crashlytics or App Dynamics, things that give that minute level of detail that can pinpoint things very quickly as far as what is happening even at a code level, to determine where that impact is to the application, whether it's performance that's just causing the app to run slow, or it's completely crashing the app and so forth. And the other thing we see that companies sometimes struggle with is making sure they have a depot. And we're talking about having replacement devices that are readily on hand that can be swapped out for devices that had completely failed, and the different accessories and so forth. So I think from a tools and technology standpoint, those are some key things that we evaluate as we go in and do that maturity assessment for help desk and support organizations.
Cool, thanks. And when we're talking about mobile, are there any modifications to those 4 tiers of support that need to be considered, or did Monica's description sort of cover everything?
Well, I think Monica did a good job in her description there. I think, as I mentioned before, the tier 2 is really, you're looking at that app support team, having at least 2 or more resources that have really good technical domain knowledge of the devices as well as those apps that you're supporting. And so they can take that initial issue that's been reported, look at the steps to reproduce, look at the different crash logs and so forth that have been captured, and try and resolve it at that tier 2. But then if they can't, they certainly would escalate it to tier 3. And in tier 3, what we've seen is more around forming an app delivery team. So that's engaging the development resources that were responsible for developing the app initially, but are there to also maintain steady state and do enhancements and so forth. And whether that's internal resources or an outsourced third party that companies use to develop their mobile apps, that's where tier 3, I think, has those types of resources. And as Monica said, tier 4 is pretty standard. That's the vendors. So if you have vendors that are providing specific software like mobile app development platforms or things from a MBAS layer and so forth, tier 4 to us is where we've seen that they have issues inherent into those platforms that are proprietary, and you have to escalate it because something has happened that's impacting the overall app or device. And so that's when it's important to have those SLAs documented and accessible. So if all else fails on the testing and the triage aspect, and nothing seems to be wrong with the app code itself, but it's certainly something inside of the actual platform that may be used, then you have the ability to escalate that to a tier 4 vendor support team and make sure that they have the right SLAs in place to respond quickly to you. And so I'm certain Todd or Nitin and Monica will add on to that, but that's, from my perspective, that's what I've seen as far as the tier structures that have been successful in help desk organizations as they move forward to support mobility.
And I also think that the tier structure is, as we're talking through this, is not linear anymore. It's a little bit of a spaghetti if you don't manage it well, but because now there are so many tentacles as mobile gets added as yet another layer, which typically does happen because organizations don't necessarily look at restructuring their support organization. They kind of do the whole bolt-on thing, like we have famously talked about, treating mobility as a bolt-on, which now also becomes a bolt-on for the support group. Okay, now we're supporting a mobile app, so we'll pick someone here. He'll understand the app, and there you go. We're ready to rock and roll. And instead of going back and understanding, well, what reorganization do we need to do? And that reorganization does not necessarily mean hiring or firing people, but reorganization in the sense that how can we now reorient people to where we are adequately supporting our mobile, just like we do our desktop, just like we do all other applications. And I do feel that that mobility doesn't necessarily get the love in the beginning, but when you start to hit a lot of the roadblocks, that's when you start to feel that, okay, this is something that we should work on. And a lot of companies solve it in different ways. Some of them hire additional people, some of them segment it, some of them say, okay, this is level 1, this is level 1.1. So I do think that customers have to step back a little bit as they start to add mobility into the mix and start to evaluate if their support organization is structured correctly to make it successful.
So let's talk about the relationship between development and support. So let's say you built your great enterprise app and it gets handed off from development to support. And this is kind of always where my engagement would end, and it would get handed off. So what are some best practices for smoothing this transition from development to support?
I think that we have a really good process put in place to do this kind of support transition or, support handed up. What we do here is we have a couple of steps. The first step is we have a support transition checklist where, we have every single area that needs to be, transitioned to support. As you know, there's some things, there's some knowledge that need to be transitioned. One of the reasons why is because sometimes the people who's, working on the project, the project team, sometimes it's not the same project team that will be, supporting the software. So it's really, really important to have, as much documentation as possible, so that we don't lose that much knowledge. So in this support transition checklist, we have documents, really important documents, such as, the SDDs, which is basically, the software development specifics. We have, all the information about the business requirements, documentation as well. We have documentation, from the architecture team, from the development team, from the QA team. From the architecture team, we have documents, such as diagrams, that have been put in place for us to understand, or not only for the support team as level 1 or 2, we're just looking at it as, as a, how can I say, like a wide picture, that the transition checklist needs to include, all the information needful for, level 1, 2, and 3, that will be working on the project. So we have information from the architecture, meaning, we have all the diagrams that had been in sequence diagram, users diagrams and stuff. From the development side, we also have documentation where we can look at, the APIs, web services, code repositories, links and stuff. We can also, include it with, some release notes or, probably each spring or, whatever. For the testing area, we have documentation about troubleshooting. We have also a document that we call a troubleshooting guide, which is basically a document where QA testing provides information about what were the most common errors that they found. If there's any constant error also that they, capture throughout the whole development life cycle, that it's in there, common error alerts, just a basic troubleshooting guide that walks you through, how the application behaves and what you should be expecting. It's more like a happy path of, how the application will look like, and, screen by screen, which is it has worked very good. As mentioned before, the business requirements, I think, is a key factor for support, especially for tier 2. That will help you to understand, if the application, if there is an issue reported by the user or by your client, that will help you a lot to understand if that's by design, if it's something that is actually by design, or if it's something that should be not happening and, it was in the scope and needs to be, fixed or treated by the company. It also helps us to understand if what the user, what is being reported, it's more like a request to change, that it's something that needs to be implemented or that it needs to be changed within the code. So this support transition checklist typically starts to, get into the picture 2 or 3 weeks before the whole project ends. Once that we call it out between, UAT and hyper support, if there is going to be any kind of hyper support or a pilot, we ideally start the support transition right there, between these time frames, so that we have, enough time to put all the documentation together, analyze it, and then just get ready for the go live. So basically, I will just say we have, the support transition checklist, the troubleshooting guide, which is also part of the support transition checklist. We have the documentation from development, the documentation for architecture, and it also includes information from the strategy team, which is, the business requirements, and probably we can look at as well, as any other document from the strategy team that might be included. But that's the process that we have and has been working pretty well.
I'm wondering how much overlap is there, or how much overlap is the support team allowed with some of the other disciplines? Like, for instance, what I mean is, let's say there's like something that's not necessarily a bug, but it's just something that's poorly designed in the UI, and somebody on the support team has a better idea for how that specific control could be designed. Are they free to sort of offer suggestions, in terms of redesigns in the UI, or, to even mock them up and so forth? Is that part of the job of a support team ever?
I think it definitely is. And not only from our experience, but also because we can hear the voice of the customer. We get the feedback from customer, their channels to, in-app feedback. They're also, submit feedback, settings within the application so that we can hear actually how the user is feeling. And we actually collect, this feedback, and we also add our inputs. And we have sometimes, for some projects, we have meetings with the product owner where we present to the product owner, the feedback that we hear from our users when it comes about UI or UX. Also, we provide feedback to the product owners on, if we're seeing that, we're getting, tickets in regards to a specific functionality of the application, and we provide that feedback to the product owner. And we have really good communication with the product owners, and the product owners, they're always been very, very open to feedback. And sometimes, they work that out pretty well.
Does that extend all the way to the code too? Like if there's a bug that's being reported, do you ever actually identify how bugs can be fixed and add your own code or recommend code to fix a bug?
When it comes about coding, for level 2, we don't really get into the code. We don't have access to the code. So specifically on how to fix an issue and how to code it, we haven't done that yet.
We could start wrapping up, but obviously it's important to know how well your support desk is doing. You've got it set up, they're running, they're supporting mobile, but how do you know how well they're doing? What are some of the important ways of measuring the success of your support organization?
Well, we have different ways to measure. We obviously we look up at, the SLAs that we have and metrics that we have put in place. For SLAs, we have metrics around the team performance and also about the software performance. So if your question is related to the team performance and how the support team is behaving, we have different metrics, such as when it comes about the triage, we have first call resolution, we have average of number of escalations. On first call resolution, we see how many tickets we were able to fix at level 2 and not to escalate it to the next level. For the average of number of escalations, that's, the positive thing. How many tickets, how many times we need to log in to escalate the ticket to the third level support because we were not able to fix it because either we didn't have the tools or sometimes the proper knowledge. We have also, the percentage of requests and incidents from ticketing system, how many tickets and requests we're getting in our portal. Also, the customer service experience, the voice of the customer, that's a really good indicator too. Also, how long we're taking to acknowledge a ticket. That's something that it's really, really important. Once the ticket is getting into our queue, how long it's taking for one of our agents to actually look into the ticket, pick it up, and start working on it. We also, look into, how many times, the acknowledge of self-service requests when it comes about the knowledge base. If we are providing the correct information to our users using our knowledge base, as Nitin and some of you mentioned before, knowledge base repository is very important. And the first action that we take every time that we get a ticket into our queue, we refer to a knowledge base. We start our search and, just try to see if there's a known issue or if there's any way that we can fix it before we can actually route it to another team. The number of total of tickets, per week, per month, how many tickets we have, how many tickets has been, open, how many tickets, have been already prioritized, which is also part of the release management process. It's important that we understand that once the ticket is open, we understand the whole ticket life cycle. For level 2, we are kind of the ticket owner. We need to make sure that the ticket, once it's getting open, is actually getting closed. Sometimes for this type of, development company entities, is not a process that it's happening right away. As you might know this already, for software development, there is a whole release management process where the ticket can be open in June, but once that it gets, prioritized with the client, it's been decided that it will not be released, fixed and released, probably in the next deployment of the app, but if, in probably 1 or 2 more deployments. So it depends on that, but that's also something that we need to take care of. As a technical level too, it's important to look at it. We need to also look at the average response time. We also need to take about abandonment, call rate. That's an also good indicator, and of course, if you want to look at it as as the whole support process flow, we can look at, the number of issues resolved by tier, going from, level 1, 2, and 3. Basically that's what we do for what we look at, the SLAs that we look at for the level support too. And, also for, obviously, again, we also come up with some metrics around the knowledge base repository to measure its effectiveness. Because, if you have a good knowledge base effectiveness, you can fix issues in a shorter time and a shorter period of time. That if you don't, it's helpful to have a knowledge base obviously up to date. It's a high maintenance, because having a knowledge base is a high maintenance. You need to be constantly updated, and having the correct team looking into every single knowledge article that it's being created. You need to have the correct people looking into these articles to actually approve it, just to make sure that the information is valid, that it is up to date, and then approve it and publish it. But there is also, that recommendation to put metrics about, and, a whole workflow approval through the knowledge base repository. I think that's what we look at to make sure that, the team, it's been successful or not.
That's great. Thank you. And, I always like to look towards the future at the end of this. So how do you think, support desks are going to handle new technologies like, AI, neural networks, augmented reality? Have you guys started to think about how you're going to best handle some of these new technologies that are coming in?
Most of the companies that we're working with, Steve, aren't there yet. Like we've been talking about for the last 60 minutes or so, it's trying to get companies even mature enough to support mobile technologies today before they can start, crawling towards supporting AI and machine learning and other types of newer kind of cutting edge technology, if you will. And so I don't know if we're there yet, but I assume we'll follow similar processes, or recommend that they start in the same fashion as they were prepping for mobile, which is, do your current state assessment, identify where your gaps are, and then from those gaps you determine what's the right path to fill those gaps, whether it's gaps in resources and the domain knowledge that's required to support those technologies and platforms that you're now introducing to your users in your environment, or is it, you have the users and the knowledge, but you don't have the tools or the processes that we've talked about. So it's the common basics that ultimately lead us to be successful in supporting not only mobile technologies, but I think the future ones that are going to be introduced before we know it.
And I think, Steve, just to flip the question around a little bit, where it's, how is the help desk supporting, these new technologies, whether it be artificial intelligence, augmented reality, et cetera. If we flip the question around, there's companies like ServiceNow who have recently released AI along with new chatbot technology connected to its HR, IT, financial solutions. So they could start, increasing their automation and improving their experience. So I just wanted to just twist it around a little bit, because while the organizations are coming up with new technologies that they need to support, I think there's good discussion and initiatives that are being done by the software companies in the service industry to add those elements to their technology so they can improve the business processes and the customer experience and improve. At the end of the day, they have to start improving their own automation.
And yeah, just to add another note on that I think it was a great twist or flip of the question. I think is something that I want to stress, something that Nitin just mentioned before about, just how the support or the help desk, is transforming over the years and what we see in the future. And I think it's really important to mention what he said again is, just the expectations probably is, that when a user is facing an issue, with its technology or the program, they don't really need to call the service desk. And I think that's something that is part of the automation and, the part of the, whole machine learning and everything that, support can actually do it's the expectation to do in the future, not to actually having the, typical interaction between the user and a help desk agent, but just more like, just having the intelligence enough, the software, the program to, be able to understand that there is an issue, capture it, and send it over to, the support team immediately. It's something that we already see. It's a technology that we already seen happening, just like error detection, where we see, the different programs as, for example, SAP, just understanding, the program, has intelligence, to identify an issue, an error, being able to capture kind of type of decode it and send it over to the support team. And the support team, gets the error message, send it over through different integrations from web services and APIs. And then just, we can start looking into it and fix it before actually having someone calling the service desk and saying that there is a problem happening. So I think that's very, very important. I see the help desk in the future, not, having this bunch of calls, to the help desk, but having a more proactive team full of, expert people looking into code issues, looking into technical issues without actually having the interaction with the customer and going one step ahead, before the users.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I do have one anecdote that I wanted to tell for my Cotter moment. I don't want to damage the tourism industry for Nantucket, and guys, if you can refrain from launching into any limericks at this point. But so here's what happened. So I'm really proud of my daughter Noah. She came home the other day and she said that they learned in school that there's a really bad tick problem in Nantucket, and that as many as 40% of the people living on Nantucket have been infected with Lyme disease because of all these ticks. And so she was telling us that they got some folks at MIT involved, and they're talking about altering the genes of the mice that carry the Lyme disease, so they get bitten by the ticks, and then that's how it gets transferred to people. And which always sounds like such a complex solution. And, I assume that part of a support team's role is to find like a simple solution or to offer a simple solution, and which my daughter was kind of shocked at the complexity of this genetic. They're going to try to alter the genetic code to make the mice resistant to Lyme disease, which sounds like, who knows if that will lead to other situations with these mice, right? So she was like, of course, she said, why don't they just, throw a bunch of chickens in Nantucket? Just like, get whatever it takes, 500,000 chickens, and they'll eat all the ticks, and then there you go, like problem solved, right? So it's just like a much simpler solution than actually trying to go in and alter the genes of all these mice, right? So it sort of just occurred to me that kind of works on the chicken level, and it kind of works on the problem solving aspect. All right, well, thanks a lot, everyone, for James, Nitin, Todd, and especially Monica. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, guys.
And thank you for joining us for another episode of Device Squad, the podcast for the mobile enterprise from Anexinet. We'll see you next time. Have you guys been to Nantucket?